So, hi, we've just received this copy of The Silver Bayonet. It's a new war game written by Joe McCulloch, who's a friend of ours, isn't he, I would say?
Yeah, I would like to think so.
Yeah, and we're a fan of his, certainly. So myself and James from Wargames Illustrated, we're going to be looking through the book, telling you a bit about it, and sort of musing over the content, I guess, really, aren't we? So we'll put it down on the table and we'll start flicking through. First of all, its subtitle is A War Game of Napoleonic Gothic Horror. So it's an era that Joe's not gone into before, isn't it, really?
No.
But we've already been discussing the similarities with his previous publications. So if you don't know, Joe McCulloch did work for Osprey for quite a long time. He's now writing independently, but he writes a lot of mainly skirmish games. Oathmark was a fancy big battle game he did, but most of the other publications of his have been skirmishy. So we've had, Frostgrave, Stargrave,
Ranges of Shadow Deep, Ghost. You can say, I always get Ghost Archipelago wrong.
Ghost Archipelago, yeah, and Oathmark.
Yeah.
I think that's about it, isn't it?
Just a small amount of games.
Yeah, just a small amount of games. Yeah, you know, he's actually quite prolific, isn't he, really? So we'll flip through the book and we'll be talking about it as we go along.
Yeah, kind of how it differs and how it might be similar to his other stuff.
Yeah, I've had a bit of time reading it. You've had a bit less time reading it.
5 minutes, maybe. But,
less time reading it, yeah. So the story behind it is it's the Napoleonic Wars. They're the backdrop for it, but there's something sinister going on in the background, which is some supernatural wars that are taking place at the same time that the British and French armies and the other armies across Europe are battling with each other. There's a battle going on which seems to start in the skies for some reason between the supernatural beings and your unit that you conjure up for the game that becomes involved in these supernatural battles. So bit of background there. Not a lot of background actually before we get to the introduction. You know, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe generally will give a quick intro and then he'll get a lot of the background into the campaign elements and the scenarios when he does stuff, so I'm guessing that'll probably be the case here as well. Yeah,
the back end of the book is very much campaigns and scenarios, and that's where a lot more of it comes in. But actually I quite like that there's not too much of the supernatural talk going on until you get towards the back of the book. So we've got the obvious sections here of miniatures and tables and terrain.
Same play area as his usual stuff, right? About 2.5 feet,
2.5 to 3 feet for table, and not exactly stacked full of terrain, but fairly heavy on terrain is the way forward, just like it is with most skirmish games. And 28mm figures. A range of figures are going to be available from North Star military figures, which we'll talk a bit more about later. Tokens and markers and dice. So you use clue markers and you also use fatigue tokens and you also use dice, which are 10-sided, aren't they?
Yeah, so they're kind of similar but different.
Yeah, Joe's not a big fan of the 6-sided dice, so his games tend to be either 10, like they were in Oathmark, or 20, like they are in Frostgrave, Stargrave. In this one, it's 10-sided dice. Then also, a deck of cards this time as well. So that's a standard 52 pack of cards, of which actually you'll only use a few of them. They create the clues that are used in the game. So another one of Joe's sort of plot devices is to use clues or what they call in Frostgrave.
It's basically just your different loot.
Yeah,
or you've got different kinds of loot in Stargrave as well. So it's essentially points on the table to generate a mission and a goal and get you going there. So I guess this will be similar. Yeah,
it's a similar kind of thing. So instead of just charging against each other, you have to move your figures, dart them around the table to collect, in this occasion, the clues, which are, you turn over a card and if it's the Ace of Spades, it's one thing. If it's the Queen of Hearts, it's something else.
So does that get revealed once you finally get to the clue?
Yeah, once you move your figures to the clue, you uncover the card, and then the card, what the card reads translates to a table. tables. So if it is,
Wait,
like I say, the Ace of
there's
Spades.
tables.
There's
In
tables.
a Joe book?
Would you be? Yeah, you might not be totally surprised to discover that. Yeah, there's tables. Joe's big on tables as well. So, yeah, we'll come across plenty of those as we go along. A unit sheet, because your standard set of figures is a unit, just in the same way that in Frostgrave it's a warband.
I get so confused.
Yeah,
Stargrave's the current one that I'm into, so crew is in my head.
Yeah,
but
crew,
I'll be calling
yeah.
these crews no doubt for a while.
Crew, or yeah, in this case it's a unit. And your unit is drawn from soldiers of various nations. So you've got the obvious Napoleonic warring factions like Austria, Britain, France, Prussia, Russia and Spain. This is an interesting bit, because this is about uniforms, and it's what it's trying to pull you away from is being slavish to having to represent your troops in full Napoleonic accurate uniforms.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, good. Yeah, you'll like that.
It's not my most knowledgeable period, so
No.
to be able to divert a little bit is
yeah, so he does say that if you don't worry about if you get the buttons wrong or the facings the wrong colours, because how can you be wrong in a supernatural world?
yeah, sure.
So this whole section here, chapter 2, is about creating the unit. The leader of the unit is the officer.
Right.
So again, another sort of McCulloch dynamic there. You'll often have a leader figure, and in this case it's the officer. In some games there's also a sort of sub-commander, isn't
Yeah, you've got like your first mate or your apprentice, but
Yeah.
I think it's just the officer really here, and then the rest of your, I nearly said crew there, the rest of your unit
Yeah.
is picked according to their recruitment stat. Is that right? You've got, that's the equivalent of the gold that you'd get usually, or the credits to spend on
Yeah,
your crew.
and ultimately the points value.
Yes.
Really, yeah. Yeah, so in this it's recruitment. So you have a certain number of recruitment points, and from that pool of points you can recruit your soldiers. They're the people who go along with the officer. And all of those, whether they're officer or soldiers, they have their stats, which are in the stat line here. That's your starting officer stat, and within the stat line are all the usual things again, worded slightly differently.
Yeah, they're basically the same but with different names, just to make it more confusing than crew and unit and all that business.
So your speed is your move, your melee is your fighting ability, accuracy is your shooting ability, your defence is kind of how tough you are, then courage as well, something that, I don't know if that's just in this game, but
you've got willpower in some of his other
right,
ones
yeah.
and things.
So yeah, courage is how you deal with the monsters, basically,
Yes.
the gribblers that you're going to come across in the game.
Yeah, I guess if it's supernatural horrors, then having fear and terror and things like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's right. Health.
This is interesting.
Are they increasing your stats?
So you can increase your recruitment, which means you then have more money to spend on soldiers before you start a battle or a campaign, which is quite cool.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't get a lot, but I'm surprised you can get something out of that.
Possibly makes just that little difference that you can get that specialist.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Yeah, so therefore your officer can have those increased stats. Attributes, they're your special skills, special abilities, which potentially are supernatural or magical, but might just mean he's a better shot or something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of, so that again is same but different to like your spells or your powers that you have in Stargrave. So.
Yeah, that's right. Equipment as well. So the officer can choose from armoury of different equipment, which might be blunderbuss or breastplate or going to the extreme, you've got a volley gun, things like that. The officer can have 2 of those, I think. I think the officer can have 2, and potentially the soldiers can have ones as well.
6 equipment slots.
That's right. When I said 2, I meant 6. Yeah, 6 equipment slots. So yeah, you can fill those with all this special equipment.
And they can get 2 from the special armory. So
yeah,
that would be more of, is that more their occult?
That's right.
Fighting?
Yeah. So this is the general armory, which is more weapons or defensive shield type stuff, and then the special armory, of course, has got the crazy stuff in like holy symbol, silver shot, salt bag.
Oh yeah.
So that was particularly special.
Oh yeah, you can be the Salt Bay, like get that meme going on.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that must be it then. Oil and torches, and yeah. So these special things that I think only the officer can have. Then we get on to selecting soldiers. It's worth pointing out at this point, as we've come across a very nice picture, that the book, as usual, in an Osprey style, is laid out really nicely, isn't it? And for a book about the Napoleonic Wars, I mean, what says it more than a sort of Georgian look, like a battered old book like that, which is this sort of fake leather book. And
even from the inside, like it's almost like it's a slide under a microscope with blood in it. It kind of sets the feel.
It does.
I think it's one of the more atmospheric books that they've done.
Yeah, it's perhaps easier to be more atmospheric when you're dealing with history than it is to do with the future, perhaps.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's possibly also that there's no photographs of miniatures.
Yes, there's no photos of miniatures at all. No, there are all these very nice illustrations of these would be your sort of officer figures, really, or your soldiers that they're illustrating. But yeah, there's no photographs of figures at all. The layout of the book is again in a very sort of Joe McCulloch style. It's very readable.
Especially if you're familiar with his previous games, because it is essentially the same sequence of chapters and progression as all of his other stuff, but just with little tweaks, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. It does take some reading, in so much as he's not a fan of the bullet point. When it comes to rules, I'm quite keen on looking at bullet points and going, okay, so this is how line of sight works or whatever. Whereas Joe, rules are sometimes buried in the paragraph, so it's a good job it's readable, because you do need to read it.
But he is a good writer.
Yeah,
and he does his flavour text as well.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's a very good writer. So you can take it away and just spend an evening reading it and really enjoy it. National recruitment list. So the different nations are able to recruit different soldiers. Britain doesn't have the same list as the Austrians, and the Austrians don't have the same as the Prussians, and so on. Although a lot of them do cross over, you can get a grenadier in several of the different nations, but they're not all the same. Then here's your soldier list. So these are the kind of people that you can recruit to join your officer, like the artillerist, the champion of faith, the doctor, the guard, all of these different sort of characters. They've all got their own stat lines as well, so they differ from the officer. They're not usually as tough, obviously.
No, some of them have got attributes as well.
Yeah, attributes, so those special abilities there again, and the equipment that they come with as well, like the musket and so on.
So it is, I mean, because that's the difference really between Stargrave and Frostgrave, is that Stargrave is very much a ranged combat game, whereas this one, obviously, almost every profile here has got a ranged weapon.
Yeah.
So does that factor more in the rules for this, that it's more of a ranged based game?
Yeah, it is more of a range based game. I mean, you can fight hand to hand, certainly, and I'm sure that'll take place in quite a few games, but at the end of the day, if you've got a musket, why not shoot someone in the face rather than
unless you've got your Silver Bayonet.
Oh yeah,
for your vampire killing.
Yeah. I think that kind of thing is going to come into the scenarios more as well.
Yeah.
If you have to get up close and personal, then that's what you need to do. So again, we've got native scout, we've got sailors, all sorts of different things, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun putting units together, picking what you're going to have. One of the interesting things is actually, although your nation confines you to what soldier types you can have, you can also go out of that. I think you're allowed to pick one from another nation as well, which is quite interesting.
Okay, that's nice.
So if officially you're Britain and you're not allowed a swordsman, you can have one. You can have him as a sort of mercenary, really.
I mean, that's an expensive one, isn't it? If that costs 30.
Yeah, well, he is your veteran hunter. So yeah, they do range from 30 down to 10, I think. So yeah.
Is there anything free in this one? Because sometimes there'll be free ones.
In Stargrave, there's free crew, isn't there? I don't think there is. I don't think nothing. There's no such thing as a free soldier when it comes to Silver Bayonets. Yeah.
Okay. How many soldiers can you get overall?
You can get a total of 7, making a force of 8 in total. So yeah, that's how many figures you're going to have on the table at the end of the day. In your unit, you're going to have a total of 8.
That's really tight.
Yeah.
You don't need to do a lot of figures there.
It's verging on micro skirmish, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And especially once you get to things like we're onto clue markers now, and that's that kind of granular detail that you can get when you're using that small figure.
Yeah, and there's also rules for things like climbing and those kind of things you'd expect with sort of tight skirmish level stuff. So the next section, chapter 3, playing the game, setting up the table. The clue markers are a big point of setting up the table because you although the cards are what they relate to, the thing on the table isn't a big ace of spades.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, you don't put the card on the table, you put something else. So I think he suggests it might be something like a book or some other kind of mystic object or something that you're trying to track down. So they have to be put on the table before the game starts. And so I think the clues are something that you find in Rangers of Shadow Deep as well. So you recognise that from there if you played that game. Checks, it tells you how checks work. During the game you need to take checks for various things. The turn is in phases.
Let's have a look. That's different, isn't it?
Yeah, this is different from quite a few things that have gone before. So initiative phase, each player makes an initiative check, so that's a roll of the dice. But then you go on to the primary player one phase. So whoever goes first, they then move half of their figures.
Because usually it would be in Frostgrave, it would be like your leader, your sorcerer activates people with them, but this half of the unit. So
that's right. Yeah. There's no follow me kind of thing
no.
that you get in Frostgrave, Stargrave. Then it goes on to the monster phase where the Gribblies might appear.
So that's like I just did Quarantine 37, and that's something that he introduced in the solo play for that.
Right. Yeah.
So that potentially makes the monsters more aggressive.
Yeah.
So that could be cool. That kind of puts the emphasis on that occult beastie stuff.
Yeah, we were talking about this. This is another sort of Joe mechanic, isn't it? To get things moving on the table.
Yes.
And for not just to be two forces facing off against each other, you've got random monsters appearing as well and getting involved and potentially stealing your clues and that kind of thing.
That mixture of player versus player and player versus environment all at the same time. So.
Yeah. Then the secondary player phase, so player 2 as it were, they then get their turn and they move all of their figures then.
Oh.
Yeah, so they don't get a secondary phase. So
that's
they
really
move
weird.
Yeah. They move all of their figures and then we're back to the primary player again who moves the second half of his figures.
I'm gonna have to reprogram my brain for this
one.
Yeah,
I can't work out how that's gonna play out. I don't know if that's going to be really frustrating for the second player or if it's going to be too much thinking for player 1, I don't know. But it's certainly different, certainly interesting.
It's going to mean that whoever goes first is potentially going to be able to be more reactive to what their opponent does, but at the same time has to commit earlier on in the turn for that initial bit.
It's a really interesting mechanic, and it's not one I can recall seeing in not only Joe's games, but any game ever.
That's a bold statement. I'm going to steer well. I'm going to lean out of shot to not be associated with that statement.
It's too bold a statement because I've not played every game ever.
Yes.
But it does seem quite innovative.
Yeah, that could be cool.
So we go from the phases to the initiative check special results, and this is where we get into Joe's love of tables.
Lovely tables.
Yeah, unexpected events table. Some things might be triggered here, like fog, whale of terror. That's not a whale in the sea, that's a shouting
That would be
whale.
awesome. It just drops from the sky, like something from the Hitchhiker's Guide.
Loads of...
So how do these happen?
Well, on the roll of a dice, don't they? Whenever a player rolls a double 10 for their initiative check, they should immediately roll on this table.
Okay, so that can create extra things happening in the game.
Yeah,
Cool.
These extra random things happen in the game. And then the next table is the unexpected encounter table. So at any time a player rolls a double 1 for initiative check, they should immediately roll on this table here. And this is when your monsters turn.
Right, yeah.
And this is when you need to make sure you've got 19 miniatures on standby, ranging from a demon to a ghoul to a cultist to a vampire.
Yeah, I mean, you could always use a counter, I suppose, to represent them, but if you want to do it properly, it's nice to have that flavour going on.
Yeah, you could, yeah.
I'm guessing North Star will have
North Star are going to be selling all this stuff, I'm sure, so you'll be able to get a living scarecrow, should you need one.
Oh, nice.
Or want one. They've all got the page reference, so if you skip to the back of the book, it gives you the stats.
Is that the bestiary area?
Yeah, it gives you the stats for all those individual creatures. Yeah, more nice art there. So then we get into things like the activation, which involves what your figures can do each turn. So obvious things like movement, going across obstructions, And again, the skirmishy stuff like jumping and falling over.
Doesn't look particularly different
No,
to what
no,
already
I don't
exists
think
in the
there's
other Joe
anything-
games.
I don't think there's anything particularly weird there. Moving to attack as opposed to just move is in there. Investigating clue markers. So that's when you get to a clue marker or loot marker, as you'd call them in Frostgrave. You then turn over the card and see what it is.
Okay, so there's no checks for that like you might get in other games. 'Cause you,
No,
you don't have to unlock it. Or
I don't
anything.
think so, but it depends what the scenario dictates.
Right.
So if you turn over the Queen of Hearts and it says that you have to do this to access it, then you may have to, if that's the case in the scenario. There's no standard as to what those things are.
That's cool.
They all relate to scenarios. So if you decide to play without a scenario, you're not really going to be using the clues.
I mean, if you're not playing with a scenario, why are you playing a Joe McCulloch game?
Yeah,
Really,
yeah,
it's
there's that. Loading and reloading.
Ooh.
So this is a new thing. I mean, it's very heavy on muskets, which of course takes some reloading in real life. So in the game, they need to be reloaded. You need to spend one of your phases reloading them.
Right.
And Joe's suggesting that you use smoke as well on the on like not real smoke, but a bit of cotton wool. I guess.
That's neat. That's like an extra little flip for the period and the weaponry of the time. That
It is, yeah.
feels right.
Yeah. So you'd be cutting what the poets call fluffing your figures.
I don't think we should talk about that on a video for all ages, Dan. That's
I don't know what you mean, but I
you're sweet
I
and
know.
innocent.
Yeah. Then on to melee combat. So melee combat is a D10 dice roll, and you're rolling. You have two D10 dice. You have your power dice and your skill dice. So weapons use either a power dice or a skill dice.
Okay.
Die, as Joe insists on calling them.
Well, it's a singular, so
well, yeah,
you know,
I don't.
don't argue with him.
No,
He's powerful.
Yeah. So yeah, it's your skill weapon or power weapon, depending on the type of weapon.
Right.
It is, basically. And you, in a lot of his other games, there's a comparison roll. So you're rolling and your opponent is rolling, and you rolling one off against the other. In this, you're just looking to achieve a score. If you pass that score, then it's a hit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just reading it whilst we're on video. It's not really the best thing, but I haven't actually fully looked at this. But yeah, that is different.
Yeah.
So there's a damage reduction attribute as well.
Yeah, that's
So that's
right.
armour.
Yeah, that's right. So your damage could be reduced.
Oh, but then you've got a strike back option.
Yeah.
So it's like it's more of a back and forth
yeah, it's
kind
more
of
back
thing.
and forth. Yeah, your opponent can strike back, choose to strike back or back off, depending on what they want to do. Yeah, there's no sort of So that's
And there's
kind of
fatigue
how
as
melee
well.
works. Yeah, but there's fatigue, so you figures can get fatigued and tire out during combat, which is what would happen if you were hitting somebody with a sword repeatedly.
So that means you can kind of pile on someone by the looks of things, and even if they're a powerful person, you can gradually get them down through attrition, which is neat.
Yeah, and that's where another tokens coming in there as well. You need fatigue tokens, something to mark the fatigue, whether you go to town on that and have model something yourself or just have a bit of blue tack.
Could speculate, like they did a Stargrave set from Sarissa, didn't they? Of the tokens and
yeah,
cards.
they did,
So
yeah.
maybe something similar for
I
this.
would guess that they would, yeah.
Okay, that sounds interesting that they've changed it up a bit.
Yeah, I think he does want to simplify it a bit from things that have done previously. So he gives a melee attack example there, and then we get straight into shooting attacks as well, which are a very similar kind of thing, although there's more reference to tables when it comes to shooting. You shooting modifier table, so things like if you're shooting a figure while you're mounted, you get -2 to hit, that kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas in melee, you don't get that.
And you have a similar reaction thing as well. You can return fire or dive for cover.
Yeah,
so
that's right. Yeah.
that's similar to the combat as well.
Yeah, if you shoot someone, they're likely to shoot you back.
Neat.
Then again, a shooting attack example. The optional rules, don't ask me about those.
That's really familiar. That's similar in his other stuff, that you've got optional crits and critical failures. So
yeah,
it's kind of good that that's still optional, I think.
Yeah, cavalry.
Interesting.
So yeah, cavalry. we don't think have featured very heavily in his game previously.
No,
I
no.
don't know if they're in ranges of Shadow League, to be honest. But obviously Napoleonic horse and musket, you should have a bit of cavalry, or at least the option to have them. So some rules for cavalry included there.
So it was speed 8 for them, so they're definitely going to get you around the board quicker.
Yeah. Terror, if you come across a monster who's particularly scary, he's going to potentially terrify you, so you need to roll on the terror check table to see what happens, and it could be anything from no effect, because you don't care, to you collapse.
Right,
So,
in a gibbering heap.
Yeah, so that could affect you during the game. Fate pool as well, so this is another element of the game that you can try and tweak to your advantage. Fate pool is a set of dice, basically 2 power dice, 2 skill dice, and 1 monster dice, and you can bring those dice into play to help you or hinder your opponent at some point
sounds
during the
neat.
game. Yeah,
Okay.
I do like that one. It's quite good. So yeah, I think you can force re-rolls and that kind of
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at, it's quite, as you were saying, there's no bullet points, but it is quite nice that there's all these things are always in bold within the rules, which really helps. But yeah, that just kind of, I guess as you get used to the game, you're going to be able to far more tactically pick your moment where once you know what your troops can do and what your most important moments in the game are, you can invest those fate dice in those times.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So that sounds neat.
Yeah, it is. It talks there about how the re-rolls work practically, and
and quick reload as well. That's cool.
Yeah.
That could really speed up.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be used quite regularly during the game for using your fate pool to do that. Talking about how the monster dice is used as well, so you can use the monster dice to manipulate the monster's actions during their activation phase as well.
So as you said, it's quite busy with the amount of detail going on the table with all that stuff going on, but because of the figure count, should be fine.
Yeah. Monster's actions. So here we get into the nitty-gritty of what happens when a monster comes on the table and how it reacts to certain things. Like he's sort of posing questions. Does the monster have an unloaded projectile weapon? Yes. If so, you do this. If not, you do that.
I did kind of flip pretty much straight to this actually, because I'm always curious about this element, and I think it's improved from Stargrave and Frostgrave, because in those, if you have a ranged weapon as a monster and there's no one around that you can attack, like ranged attack, you just move randomly, whereas in this the monster will directly move either towards a clue or towards an enemy.
Right,
so that means that even with a ranged weapon, it's moving instinctively to make itself more of a mischief, which feels like a really good improvement.
And I think the way he's handled this is this almost sort of flowchart approach, isn't it? Is it this, then do this.
Yeah, quite simple, but I think it's going to be more effective in this one than in Stargrave and Frostgrave for making the monsters more aggressive.
Yeah. Ending the game is kill everything or do what it says in the scenario.
So. Yeah.
It doesn't end if your officer dies or anything.
Okay.
But yeah. Right. This is a campaign section. Now, Joe McCulloch's big into his campaigns. He likes to see your officers and your soldiers and your unit in general progress from a starting unit to being something a bit better and collecting things along the way. Checking for injury, death, or madness.
Madness is nice. Yeah.
So these are all tables that you roll on at the end of the game. We're getting into the area here where we're going to start skipping through it quite quickly because we don't want to spoil anything.
No,
do we really?
And we're going to probably delve more into this in future videos or magazine content, aren't we? Because we all actually want to play this game, and we're going to start off our units and actually document our progress through playing the Silver Bayonet.
We're lucky enough that North Star have given us 3 units to start with. So we've got a French, a British and a Spanish, and 3 of us here are going to take one of the units each, and we're going to paint them up and then get into them, talk about what abilities they've got and all that kind of thing. So if you stay tuned to Wargames Illustrated YouTube channel, you get to see that, right?
Yeah, it should be fun, so make sure to subscribe and ring the bell.
Yes, don't know what that means, but right, then we've got scenarios. We go through all the scenarios again, which is sort of a campaign element to it all. So again, we're not going to spoil that for you.
No, well, I mean, this stuff, it feels kind of bad to skip it because it's such an important part of what brings the flavour to Joe's Games, but at the same time, you'll just have to wait, and we'll do more about this in the future.
As you see, this is where the clue cards come in. So if you turn over the King of Diamonds, that's what it means. In this occasion, you've got strange footprints.
Okay.
Jack of Diamonds, you've got mutilated corpse. And
lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, so they either add fate pool stuff, or they change. Oh, they change stats.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so the model that unveils the partly gnawed limb will make a courage check or suffer damage. That's quite cool. Reduce their stats.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, these will be set out in a standard way throughout the whole thing. So you set up again on the next one, and special rules.
And rewards for your experience in between the games.
Yeah, that's the rewards you get at the end, yeah.
Much refined experience. There's just like 1 or 2 as opposed to usually you're getting numbers in the 10s or 20s or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose that's relevant to what you can do to regard to spend them, is it? Plus 2 experience points for securing the goal.
Yeah, it just means that you don't end up with like 100+ experience that you have to do math out and work out. So that seems like a good simplification.
Yeah. So 10, 9, 10 scenarios, yeah.
So that's similar to the first Frostgrave release and Stargrave as well.
And then creating your own scenarios, and he's giving you some examples of how you should deal with monsters and how you should deal with clue markers in your own scenarios, that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's cool.
Bit of a sort of dungeon master's guide kind of thing.
More good art.
Yeah. And then solo play as well. So any solo players out there who want to give this a go, Joe's Chapter 6 will give you some ideas on how you can play the game on your own, which I think, even from our description, you can see how it could lend itself.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, especially with the random movements of the monsters or generated movements of the monsters.
Yeah, I think the nature of Joe's Games makes it more suited for solo play than quite a lot of other games out there, because you're not needing to really go into detail on what your opponent is doing. It's just those monsters causing trouble.
And then there's also some solo play scenarios as well.
Ooh, nice.
So yeah, he's gone big on solo players. Handy if you're still in lockdown.
Yes.
So here we come to the monster list. So this is what we talked about earlier. If you roll for these things on the table, the bandit will appear, or the dark wolf will appear, or the cultist will appear, and here's all their stats for those kind of things. So some interesting things and opportunities to buy more models, which is always a good thing.
And they've got all their own attributes as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, vampire, I can't think he could be particularly nasty. Werewolf as well. Creating your own monsters, so again some ideas on that. And then we get into the attributes. So these are the special abilities that we talked about early on. So these are things like chilling touch. These are all fairly predictable. You know, they'll give you a +1 to damage, or they'll give you a +1 accuracy when shooting, or something like that.
There's artillerist just there, which is weird because there's not actually, you can't buy a big gun to use in your unit,
to employ
right?
an artillery piece, at least one figure with this attribute must be within. So I think you can a lot.
I think there's guns on the table that you can actually move to and then fire from positions, which is quite neat.
I see, right.
Yeah.
Some of these are not fantastical at all, like an expert climber, whereas some of the other ones are like demonic fire. So that's basically a fireball spell, isn't it, basically? Loads of attributes there. I'm sure they'll be expanded on in supplements and things like that as well.
There's even spells.
There's spells. Do you know what? I didn't even know there was spells. But there are spells.
It looks very brief. I mean, they're really simple.
Compared to something like Frostgrave, it's very brief on the spells.
I'm sure that's something Joe will consider expanding upon in the future.
Then, of course, you've got your photocopyable, downloadable stuff, your unit sheet.
Figures.
Oh, figures, yeah, look. They'll start making a range of figures. That's good, isn't it? That's handy for everybody.
Yeah.
And especially for us, seeing as we've already got some, and we're going to be telling you all about how we put our units together.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll be doing that over probably the next month or so, right? And then get gaming.
Yeah. We will, Well, I'm looking forward to giving it a go.
Are you nervous, Dan?
About which bit?
Painting figures.
Oh, I thought you meant about werewolves.
Them too. I mean, they're a real threat.
I'm gonna paint up my own unit, and I'm not nervous because I know I've got some really good tutors in you and Mark. But I'm nervous to show anybody at the end, I think.
They'll be great, I'm sure.
Yeah. So you can all look forward to seeing I think I've been given the Spanish gorilla.
Yeah, I think they'll work out nicely for you.
I think I heard you say behind my back, they'll be the easiest to paint.
We may have posited that was the case, but yes.
So yeah, that'll be good. I'm looking forward to that. There you go. It's called The Silver Bayonet. It's by Joseph A. McCulloch, and it's from Osprey Games, and it will be available in about November 2021.
Okay.
There you go. This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.